I'm gonna head out to the overpass. Put the kid to work.
Okay, I could use some more supplies. Head on down to the tracks. I'll explain on the way.
By myself?
Hey, I know there's some scary out there, but it's all in how you look at it. You tell yourself you're gonna have a good time, you'll have a good time. Am I right? But seriously, those fucking OD will tear you apart. Be careful.
Summertime. The beaches, the barbecues, Oh, wait. Well, if I'm gonna be stuck at home all season, might as well snag some games from the Steam sale to get my mind off of current events. And that's how I got Sunset Overdrive. Sunset Overdrive is a 2014 third-person shooter by Insomniac Games. It was originally an Xbox exclusive, but was brought over to Steam around 2018. You play as a custom character in the post-apocalypse, or as one of your newfound friends calls it,
The awesome apocalypse!
the inhabitants of Sunset City fall victim to an outbreak as a result of the mishandling of a food item. Well, just like in real life, the city's in ruins and the surviving inhabitants have formed factions and live in autonomous zones. However, unlike real-life autonomous zones, everyone seems to be thriving in this new social order, and it's up to you to curry favors among several interested parties in order to find out what caused the outbreak and how to escape the city.
Okay, here's how this is gonna go. First I'll run some errands for you, then you'll like me, and then you'll help me. Not gonna happen. Trust me, works every time.
At first, I wasn't sure what to make of Sunset Overdrive. It's a single-player, open-world shooter that sometimes has tower defense missions, and other times it has fetch quests. Who is this game for? It doesn't have any online features besides leaderboards, and thus lacks appeal for competitive or cooperative play. And its tone is too goofy to appeal to the grim dark Gears of War market. Speaking of tone, boy, did I have the worst initial impression of the game. An energy drink that's actually bad for consumption in a setting where motion graphics talk directly to the player?
It'll kill you.
Draw attention.
Obesity, stupidity, drink virility.
I was having Don't May Cry flashbacks, and I'm not entirely wrong on that front. It's got that punk aesthetic that DMC was looking for, but it's not wallowing in misery and cynicism, so that's a plus.
You're my hero!
After a while, I actually started to like the game's tone and humor.
Hey, man, am I glad to see you. Pretty dangerous out there, huh? Well, as long as you're out there, you mind grabbing some comics for me? I'll totally make it worth your while.
Except for this guy. I hate this guy.
So at this point, you've got this magic comic and a mission to save the comics of Twilight City. The story needs more.
How about a villain?
Yes, a villain. Someone who hates comics. Like my ex. Just kidding. Not really. I actually never had a girlfriend, whatever. Anyway, I gotta think about this. Just, keep up that first edition Justice comic night.
I didn't understand the game's tone until I had a chat with my friend Chanka, and he put it all together for me. This game is Saints Row for kids. You know those games that are clones of well-established genres, but are marketed to kids? That's Sunset Overdrive. The fact that all of the character customization options all have some punk edge to them, which for some reason means applying stray splotches of paint to clothes. The music, which has catchy drums and bass lines, but is ultimately meant to be the audio equivalent of wallpaper while you're blasting enemies in the middle of your parkour string. The content filters you can toggle to bleep out cuss words and censor the gorier elements of cutscenes. Still doesn't excuse the game's fast travel animation though. The bright colors, the wacky guns, and platforming, The sense of humor that's too self-aware for its own good.
Well, good luck, kid.
My name's Sam, but since you saved me and all, let me do something for you.
Nah, not unless you know where I can find a propeller.
A propeller? That's Dirk. His mom is an award-winning physicist, and his dad is an astronaut. He's really good with aerodynamics.
Aerodynamics? How convenient.
All of the lol random respawn animations. The dated references.
If you cook the sharks in a high-pressure vat and mix in just the right ingredients, you can get some pretty awesome I call them amps, and trust me, you're going to love them.
Your street name isn't Heisenberg, is it?
Now, the second task. There is one ring I very much desire. This elusive ring is only carried at a particular merchant near downtown. Thy ring is called Auspicious, and it should look stunning on mine hairy paws. Tally-ho!
One ring named Specious. Hey, Ignatius, do you know what the word plagiarism means?
Just find the ring!
Waiting for Fiscal Protocol X-26. Protocol not detected. Banana stand coolers active. Banana stand structure intact. Banana stand sales substandard. Banana stand money secure. Waiting for Fiscal Protocol.
Right! There is always money in the banana stand. Huzzah!
Yeah, Arrested Development's 4th season should have debuted around this time. This game is definitely marketed to the 13 to 14 year old crowd. Like, there are points in the game where you can tune into Sunset TV. Like, those are an actual physical location. And you get this not Pete Davidson guy giving you hot tips on how to play the game.
Hello and welcome to Sunset TV. I'm Brandon Winfrey, and let's prescribe you with a full dose of good old Sunset Overdrive. I watch Scrubs, so pretty much a doctor. Last week I said I was going to talk about character customization, but last week I lied.
I'm actually impressed with how far I can watch this screen and not see a drop in quality. You're either gonna love or hate how much this game breaks the fourth wall.
Yeah! Okay, now you have to equip those amps.
How? I mean, if this were a video game, I could just go to a menu or something.
Pay attention, player!
Why am I hearing disembodied voices?
Because you need to learn some and studies have shown this is the best way.
Don't worry, the game doesn't always openly address the player to deliver instructions. That self-awareness pays off for certain occasions. For example, if you've done the majority of side quests in the game, indicated by the floating blue icons above certain characters' heads, you get to do a late-game side quest about collecting side quest icons for the local side quest company, which requires you to do several side quests all in succession.
Not exactly mint condition, but still functional. Thanks, honey.
What is it about these icons that make people so helpful?
It ain't the icons, baby. It's what you get on the back end. Here.
I actually like that bit. But the game's cheekiness also kneecaps whatever impact the game tries to have at certain plot points. Early on in the story, you meet up with a grizzled boomer who takes you under his wing. Things happen that require you to earn his trust and respect.
Yeah, did you see that? You're lucky I was here.
What a up.
Yeah.
I meant you.
What was I supposed to do?
And just when you guys bond over flying out of the city, the game's boundaries become a plot point, and your newfound mentor throws you out of the glider to save you, but didn't have enough time to save himself. This dude lasts about as long in this game as Joel does in The Last of Us 2, but has a much more dignified ending. No one ever brings up this guy again except your mutual buddy. Like, he's still mourning over him at the 4th hub of the game.
You've got to keep doing what you're doing. And I gotta keep my mind off Walter.
So once your mentor dies, the training wheels come off, and the game really opens up. Gameplay in Sunset Overdrive is really just 2 loops. running missions, and base defense. Running missions amounts to talking to a character with a mission marker over their head, and following the instructions as they appear on screen. Missions will amount to some combination of fetch quests and killing enemies. The most common enemy in the game are the OD. Overcharge, the energy drink responsible for the outbreak, turns anyone who ingests it into a mutated abomination, creatively called Overcharge Drinkers, or OD. Think zombies with huge orange blisters. They'll mutate into different kinds of OD, with range capabilities, flight, or turn into colossal titans. One type even acts like a mobile monster closet, creatively called the Spawner. I love and hate the bloated ones because they're the kamikaze enemies, but they have this cool particle effect where the explosion is an automatopoeia that always faces the player's camera. It gives off a similar grungy comic book effect as the ones in Tiny and Big. The game tells you early on that OD are vulnerable to fire and shotgun type weapons. There are also non-OD enemies that populate Sunset City. Scabs are a gang of hostile, non-mutated humans, because at the end of the day, man is the real monster. They come in 3 flavors: shooty guys, roller derby girls, and explodey boys. The last hostile group are Fisco robots. Fisco created Overcharge, and was responsible for the outbreak. Because they basically own Sunset City, they locked the entire area down with their energy walls, and sent in their drones to handle the evidence.
Sam?
Help! Fisco is getting rid of the evidence!
What evidence?
Us! We're the evidence!
They're a mix of both OD and Scab types, with standard gun bots, agile sword bots, explosive turret bots, and titanic big bots. Scabs and drones are vulnerable to automatic weapons. To combat these threats, you have to arm yourself with custom weapons created by 2 Hat Jack. He's got shops all over the place and has a presence in every one of your bases. This is where the game feels the most like an Insomniac game. If you didn't know, Insomniac are best known for the Ratchet & Clank series, which involve both creative weapons and platforming. Although the weapons are supposed to be the big draw to Sunset Overdrive, I wasn't very awed by them. Like, there are definite standout weapons, but they don't stand out because they're iconic like Ratchet & Clank weapons. They stand out for their utility in comparison to the other weapons in the game. They're not bad per se. If I were 14, I'd probably find them funny. Like, the starting weapon is a shotgun with truck nuts called the Flaming Compensator. The first explosive weapon you get is a spud launcher that shoots explosive teddy bears. The really useful ones deploy area of effect attacks that soften up enemies, which you can finish off with a more conventional weapon. These are all great and provide an initial chuckle, but sometimes you just want to bring an AK because you don't want to fart around in some fights.
But you guys should probably have guns.
Nay, we shall not besmirch our honor with such sorcery. Be there a cleric on the field? Anyone have a healing potion? Alack, 'tis too late. My blood, my blood. My blood boils! Give me a f***ing gun!
Your weapons level up as you use them, and each level increases their damage output and ammo capacity. There are some things I find weird about Sunset Overdrive's weapons. First, you're pretty much given most of the good ones throughout the game. That starting shotgun never left my inventory, because it was so effective at dealing with OD, even after I got a smaller one-handed shotgun that reminded me of Halo 3's Mauler. I kept both in my arsenal, because they were very effective at dealing with specific targets. Don't buy the first AK you see in the shop. You will get one later in the game, and that leads to my second nitpick about weaponry. There are weapons that look like reskins of other weapons, so I wrote them off as redundant. There are 2 types of Mauler shotguns available in the game, and one of them has better stats, but it really doesn't matter at the end of the day, because once you commit to one, you'll put so many levels into it that it makes up for its starting shortcomings. Despite being a third-person shooter, Sunset Overdrive's combat places a greater emphasis on mobility over accuracy. If you're just standing still and firing your weapons at enemies, you're gonna have a bad time. You gotta dodge, dip, duck, dive, and dodge swarms of OD as you lay in on them with bullets, or stuffed animals, or LPs like your John Yickman. If you're playing Sunset Overdrive, do yourself a favor and keep auto-aim on. You don't want to be grinding along a wire in one direction, while looking at the opposite direction and struggling to line up an accurate shot. That's just going to give you tunnel vision and cause you to ignore the OD hanging on the wire on your way, ready to knock you down. At first, combat feels off. It doesn't feel as satisfying as it should to mow down zombies while moving around the city. You can bounce off of most surfaces to reach wires or rails to grind, but some areas feel out of reach with your limited jump distance. It doesn't help that you're also probably hurting for health because the enemies are really good at swarming you. Overall, combat doesn't feel good. At first. Then you learn about amps and unlock new movement options. Early in the game, one of your buddies introduces you to amps, the game's big conceit. Amps are passive buffs you can purchase from your buddy who used to work for Bisco. If you collect enough ingredients that are spread along the map, you can craft amps and attach them to your weapons or even to your character. Once you have amps equipped, you have to start moving around the map while attacking enemies to build style. As your style level increases, your amps activate at specific levels. When you have max style, all of your amps get amplified. The most important amp to get early in the game is the one that leaves a health trail wherever you go, because it's basically the game's regenerating health system. This is how you survive during fights, without having to hunt down green crates to find health pickups. You can craft certain amps by doing base defense. Place traps around key parts of the base so that the OD can't get to the amps as they're brewing, since they require overcharge and the OD are attracted to that stuff. As the campaign progresses, you unlock new mobility options that make it easier to traverse the city and build style. Things like getting a high jump if you press jump just after doing a ground pound. The most important mobility ability is the air dash. You can now move like Jetstream Sam. This is what lets you improvise your navigation without dropping style. When the game opens up, it really does feel good to play. It helps that Sunset City is a fun playground. I can never memorize the layouts for open world games, but there are plenty of distinct landmarks in the city that help me know whether I was in Chinatown, or the industrial area, or by the docks. It's definitely better than the samey look and traversal that Saints Row 4 offers. What's also cool to see in Sunset Overdrive's open world is the interaction between various enemy types. You could catch a fight between OD and Bisco bots or scabs, and either get involved or sit back and watch the carnage. The cast of characters you meet are not terrible. The factions all feel like they were sourced from a game of Mad Libs. What if the nerds were preppy? What if the Boy and Girl Scout troops were weeaboos? What if the LARPers went native? What if the cheerleaders dressed up in Dia de los Muertos makeup? The friends you meet along the way are decent enough.
My name is Wendy, and I'm the only one around here who's not living in a 12th century fantasy. So listen, Ignatius is sick, for real. He needs 21st century food and medicine.
Laura Bailey seems to be having a lot more fun here than she was on Twitter a month ago.
We have to go back.
Are you crazy?
My friends need me.
That'll be fine. We just went through hell to get out of there. Why would you want to go back?
Before this whole thing started, I just floated through life, never taking anything seriously. Then Horror Night happened, and I know this is gonna sound crazy, but my life didn't start until the world came to an end. That's why we're going back.
What if I say no?
Aye, aye, Captain! Hold fast, we're coming about!
You do missions to win these factions over and help you in the final mission to escape the city. It's definitely pretty cool to see NPCs that belong to these factions scout the open world and get into fights with enemies. You can also help these NPCs or leave them to do their business. Some quests require you to make contact with more than one faction, and it's cool to see those interactions. One of the cheerleaders has a brother who's part of the LARPers, and their dad works for Fisco. Another cheerleader faked her death so that she could settle down with her boyfriend, who's a former scab. This game makes the most with what it has. The boss fights are cool set pieces, and they play up the game's strengths. Fighting bosses is more about the traversal during combat, and less about the actual shooting. Dodge this enemy's electric attack by jumping to another rail. Shoot the spikes off this dragon's back so you can grind along its spine and impale it with your style meter like Deadpool in MVC3. I definitely recommend playing Sunset Overdrive. The humor's corny, but endearingly corny. The gameplay might feel a little lacking early on, but it really opens up after the first third of the game. It's definitely the kind of game I was looking for in my Family Guy review. A third-person shooter that doesn't try to change the world, but rather provides a surprisingly good amount of content and doesn't outstay its welcome.
Together we'll take Fisco down! Or we won't, but we'll get some wicked respawn animations! Who's with me?
Story, let's go. Company, Fisco, Sunset City. Awesome apocalypse, things got crazy. It all started when we launched our energy drink, overcharged delirium XT, I think. Anyway.